Sure.
Huh?
Yep. Well, here we are at Thurgood Marshall Middle School Building Committee meeting number 9, and this is what we're going to discuss today with the help of Lynn Stapleton from Jocelyn Lesser and Jean Raymond from Raymond Design, our schematic design estimate and submission. The schematic design submission is due to the MSBA on August 8th, am I correct? And
Yes.
so I know you've been working feverishly on that submission, so.
What we're going to do today is provide you an overview of the documentation that we will be presenting to the MSBA. The binders are pretty in-depth, but we're going to give you an overview of everything that will be included in that. And the majority of what is in the binders is our backup for the cost that we'll be showing you. Let Jean take over and give you an overview of the
around the table. Thank you. What I'm passing out is, I don't even know what it is, 8 pages or something. It's kind of highlights from the schematic drawings that we're in the process of putting together. And this package will go to MSBA. It's already been with the cost estimators, both the cost estimator we hired and then cost estimator that the city hired through Walsh Brothers, the contractors. So there have been 2 independent groups looking at this and providing a construction cost estimate that will be, is in the process, or actually has been kind of reconciled, the differences between the 2. We spent all day yesterday reconciling them. And so the drawings, as Lynn said, a lot of what goes in the binders back up to the drawings. You know, here's the report on the soils, here's the furnishings that are going in the building, here's the technology, you know, blah, blah, blah. So even though I've just picked out a few drawings here as kind of an overview of the design, you'll notice on the list of drawings that there are a number of architectural drawings, and then there's site drawings, electrical drawings, plumbing, sprinklers, all the various trades. So the package is very detailed, and the cost estimates that have been going on are very detailed and very thorough. And that's what MSBA is looking for, it's what we're looking for, it's what you all are looking for. We're really trying to be as thorough as we can in this phase so that there's very few, if any, surprises when we actually get into the construction.
Excellent, excellent.
What's that? Yeah. So also on the cover sheet, you can see, well, also what's been going on the last, I don't know, 3 months, plus or minus. It has been kind of bi-weekly meetings with the working group. And so we spent a lot of time with the educators, laying out multiple versions of what a very compact, efficient, but actually very useful, you know, well laid out and very functional middle school would be. And you can see on the front page here, there's kind of a view as if you were, I guess, hovering over even kind of where the existing school is, looking across the neighborhood, across Brookline Street to where the school is. And so we have a 4-story building on the left, and that's broken up into a series of core facilities on the first floor, as it always has been, and then 3 stories of educational cluster-driven space on the upper 3 floors. And then over on the right is kind of what you might call the community end of the building. It's obviously used by the school because it encompasses the cafeteria, the gymnasium. We're even showing, because the site is so small, there's no room for playfields, we are showing and estimating putting an artificial playfield on the top of the community end of the building. So it's been vetted very thoroughly by the educators, and then we've been vetting it on the technical end, and months, have been betting it on the cost estimate. So the first sheet is drawing A 0.1, and probably no surprises here. We've highlighted the site in the red dashed line around the perimeter. It's that long, narrow site that we've been talking about ever since day one. You can see there's a little bit of green space on the site, but really it's just planting beds. We are really taking up most of the site with parking lots, one on each end, a ring road around the back, and the building footprint. Hence, over the gymnasium and the cafeteria here on the right side, that's where we're talking about having an artificial surface on the top of the roof for play area. We have done studies on the train track with an acoustical consultant. They were out on the site for a day. They were out there all day, and they took a number of noise and vibration readings when trains were going by, and made very specific recommendations to our design team on how to knock down that noise so that when the school is operating, it's not going to be a distraction. And what they've done is told us specific construction to use on the back wall and the two end walls, actually. So the acoustic, the train might be over here near Chatham Street, and it might impact the side walls. So it's not just the rear wall that we're talking about. We're talking about the two end walls and the rear wall, treating them with special windows and special wall construction so that, again, you're not getting a lot of vibration, you're not getting a lot of noise. I mean, it's really a pretty stringent acoustically designed features. And all those special features are accounted for, and they're all within the budget that we presented during the feasibility study. On the site itself, when we got permission to go on, which was subsequent to the feasibility study, you'll remember during the feasibility study, we only had access to one boring, which was sticking a pipe down the ground and trying to figure out what the ground could support. That boring gave us the indication that we could, if everything on the site was based on that boring, we would have had a very simple foundation system. And at that point, we priced out the building somewhere around $64 million. I'm going to let Lynn get into specific numbers, but I'm just trying to get order of magnitude. But we said, when we get on the site, if we find out, and we do borings and test pits all over the site, if we find out there's different conditions, and it's not all the same as that one boring we had, that we wanted people to put aside in their minds $7 million for special foundation systems, and that's made up of actually steel I-beams or precast columns that are going to go down in the ground 100 feet plus till they hit bedrock, and then we're gonna support the building on that, because there's a big layer of clay here. As it turned out, we came on the site a few months ago. We did 18 more borings, and we did 12 test pits, which is just taking a backhoe out there and going down as far as we could go. All of the soil that came out of those pits was analyzed for two things. One, what could we build on top of it structurally without special foundations? And then number two, are there hazardous materials there? Because it was a site that had a lot of former uses, and we have to know that. So we had good news really on both. It's not going to sound like good news, but we've really cut the cost. We do need to do a piling foundation. The one boring that was there happened to be where the layer of good dirt was thickest. And as we went kind of to the left and to the right of that boring, we found that instead of 40 feet of good stuff, it was getting down near 20 feet. And we couldn't support the building on that, so we are going to go with a pile foundation system. But the good news is that where we had been conservative and in the feasibility study and said, put aside $7 million, 6.9, or, you know, again, I'm rounding just to tell the story. We have worked very, very hard with our structural engineer, with the geotechnical engineer, and actually with Walsh. Having them on board was critical because they brought in actual foundation contractors, and we knocked that $7 million down to about $4 million as far as doing that foundation. So the project as it stands today is still within where it stood in the feasibility study, given that we have to do a pilot foundation. The second thing from the environmental standpoint, all the analysis on the soil and the water that was extracted during the borings and test pits. Our geotechnical consultant said there's a very small amount, 20 cubic yards of soil that is just barely over a reportable level, so to speak, and needs to be removed. But he said overall it was much cleaner than you might reasonably expect. Okay, so right now we have set aside a little bit of money in the project budget in case we find something during construction. But at this point, there's no major chunks of money that are.
One thing we did find was, you might want to talk about
Yeah,
that, the
that's
underground
fine.
storage tank that was full of,
It was heating oil, essentially. We found one concrete tank that over this end of the site, and the tank was in great shape. It wasn't cracked. Nothing was leaking out. It happened to be filled with some. We didn't know exactly what it was. We thought it might be asphalt sealant or really thick oil, like number 6 heating oil or something. Neither of which are really hazardous, but they need to be dealt with. And so we had that tested. And it's a very, very simple process. The geotechnical engineer actually found a place that would take the oil is pretty pure, it's pretty good shape, so we found a place that would take it for free. So there is some cost associated with taking the oil out of this tank, transporting it, and then cleaning the tank. But really, you know, when you hear that you found $20,000 gallons of stuff in a tank, you know, it was about as
instead of
benign.
being
as you
about
could-
$100, we were able to mitigate the cost.
It was about as benign as you could, you know, have.
So Gene, we would leave the tank in place and fill it in with dense grade or something?
Yep, you would, yep. Yeah. And we also found from all the old buildings here, there are a number of foundations that were left under the ground. So again, working with the 2 cost estimators and the geotechnical consultant, we just, at this point, we're gonna leave as many as we can. We're just gonna cut out the ones that are in the way of the pilings of the road. So we're not gonna spend a lot of money pulling foundations out and then just building another building on top. We would have had to do that if we had went with a traditional foundation system. So there's trade-offs on all these things. But overall, I think the good news on the site is we're really not spending significant money cleaning it at all. And then the foundation system is going to be incredibly solid, but it's not half the price of what we were carrying with the feasibility study. And everything again is still kind of within that.
That's great news.
The construction budget we have. So, the other thing that we spent a lot of time studying is this underground culvert. Remember, there's storm sewer that goes under the site. It's got a 6-foot wide culvert that goes under the site. And we've always been designing our building kind of around it. We put the thinnest part of our building over it in case it ever had to be repaired. We could always get to it without, you know, having to rip up a gym floor or something like that. And we spent a lot of time. The piling foundation is actually going to help us quite a bit because we can just drill and put piles on either side of it, and then we'll just stand on top of it with a structural concrete slab. So we're not gonna be increasing any pressure on this, and there's really no reason. We have to work around it and be careful, but we don't have to spend money replacing it, we don't have to reline it, you know, this foundation system's gonna help us, impact that less than the other foundation type might have.
We have been in contact with the MBTA as well, and we requested a meeting with their operations people to review, working adjacent to railroad tracks. There's a good bit of, requirements when we work adjacent to the railroad tracks. We're incorporating that into our specs. We will not be crossing their right of way, so it should be just a matter of them checking to make sure that we put all of our precautions and our specifications to make sure that we're working safely adjacent to railroad tracks. There is an application that we have to fill out that Walsh is going to help with, since they will be the contractors or the CM for the project. And we're going to start that process now that we have the set of all the schematic design complete. So that's another big step, but we don't anticipate it having a major cost impact on the project because we are staying outside of the railroad right of way.
And then finally, another thing that's on this agenda, but it's a site, it has former buildings on it, and even if it's a virgin site, we still have to submit to Mass Historic, and they have to tell us if there's any historical artifacts or any historical significance to the site, and we have to, then they have a series of conditions. So we did, Justin Lassie did make that application.
And we did receive approval, so there's no extenuating conditions that we would have to incorporate, we're all set with that. We also made a submission to the Department of Special Education, and we made that submission in June. I did receive word back that they were going to not submit it to them until our schematic design came in. They had decided to do that prior to, just recently they made this change, where we usually send it in 60 days in advance, so we would have our approval prior to the schematic design submission. They've decided that it's better to wait until the schematic design submission, because a lot of times things change during that 60-day period when you're going through all the costs. So we have not changed ours. So we'll be just making a statement in our schematic design submission saying that our, the submittal that we made remains.
So I guess overall on the site, we're very positive about it. So far, Mass Historic, no issues, and, just some minor issues we have to, none of it's a surprise, and a lot of it was surprises to the good side. The next couple of pages are floor plans. These again were worked out with the school department, with a lot of their effort and a lot of their input, and really have turned out quite well. The first floor, we've highlighted the corridors kind of in this buff color, and I've just put some very rough, and I apologize, but just some arrows showing the connections and the relationships between various spaces within the school. But on the first floor, kind of the left side, this left piece of the four-story wing, the administrative and kind of the health and guidance, all these places are on the first floor in this one central location. And the reason was that they wanted to control the door, know who's coming in and out. And also, a lot of times, parents will come in and they'll go to the guidance, or they'll have a meeting with the social worker or the school psychologist, et cetera, et cetera. So all that stuff's down here on the first floor. The library is right on the lobby, so you walk in, there's the heart of the school right there, the media center. On the, and then everything over to the right, it's all core facilities. We have an art kind of suite, I call it for lack of a better word, but it's an art area. It's two studios, and then they're gonna share a computer lab with the music department, which is these other two rooms. There's a choral room and a band room. And that computer lab can be used for graphics, digital art. The music department can use it for composition, for any number of uses. So it's a multi-purpose and very efficient. Instead of having each department have its own lab, it's a very efficient layout. There's the technology education is right in this core also, with a big wood shop and also a computer lab for drafting. And then over on the right side, I have it listed as after hours, but clearly it's school. It's the cafeteria, it's the gymnasium. But you'll notice I highlighted in kind of this pink color in between is the stage. The stage is going to open up to both spaces, and both spaces are going to have sound systems for use for performances. So if you have a small event, you might use the cafeteria, and the stage would open up to it. If you have, you'll notice in the gymnasium, there's a bunch of bleachers. We've got 1,200 bleachers in there, which is going to hold the whole population of the school. So the MSBA won't let you have an auditorium, won't let anyone have an auditorium in the middle school. But what we've done is open up the stage to the gymnasium, so you could have a whole school assembly and either have a performance or obviously some sort of lecture or something. The building is also segregated along this red dashed line so that everything to the right is one story, and it can be locked off, and it can be open after hours. And everything to the left could be inaccessible at that point.
Or the whole first floor could be accessible and the upper floors could be locked off, since these are all common spaces, and you may have something in the library after hours, or in the art and technology or music suites, but you could lock up all the academic spaces above.
The gymnasium, as you know, you had, again, because of the lack of play space, we have a large gymnasium. So the city was granted by MSBA based on the number of pupils, really, but also the lack of outside area. The gym is large; it's 12,000 square feet, and it's capable of holding four groups of activities going on.
2 basketball courts.
Yep. There's one full-size high school court, and then there's 2 full-length but a little smaller courts going perpendicular. So the first floor really lays out well. It's very functional, and it's all kind of core facilities. When pupils come into the building, they're going to spend most of their time on the upper 3 floors in this left-hand portion of the building. And again, working with the school department, we laid this out so that we broke down the 1,100 pupil school into 10 clusters, 10 smaller clusters, maybe 125 kids. Some of them are even less. But we're trying to break what's a big school down into bite-sized pieces for these students and for the teachers. And that's going to reinforce a lot of things, but it's going to keep the pupils circulating in this area, a very tight relationship with their teaching group. They're not in between classes taking long trips across, through endless corridors to get to their next class. So we've numbered them 1 through 10 as clusters, and you can see that they're always, so to speak, dead ends. There's always emergency ways to get out, but if you go in your cluster, that's great. You're not. If you go into cluster 1, you're not traveling through cluster 2 to get there. So cluster 1 has its own area, cluster 2 has its own, cluster 10 has its own. And that you'll see is a common theme, as I really don't have to go through it, but as you go through the upper 2 floors, these 2 4-story pods are laid out in very specific clusters, and it's going to do a lot to calm down the school and to, again, make really build relationships within the clusters. Each cluster has a teacher planning room associated with it. Each cluster has a project room. And when I say clusters, it's actually pairs of clusters, because you'll notice bathrooms, project room, teacher planning room, and assistant principal is in a center core between the two clusters. And all of those spaces are accessible from either cluster. The administrative suites or offices where each floor has one. The principal's down on the first floor, but assistant principal, hall monitor, another assistant principal are on the upper floors. They're in this corner right here. There's a glass wall, and from that office, there's complete supervision of the public corridors, the areas outside the clusters. So there's one more, if you flip the page to A1.1, you'll notice on the bottom floor plan, there's kind of the typical cluster, number 3 and 4 on the left side, but on the right side, cluster number 9 is the life skills cluster. And that's made up of 2 life skills rooms and the occupational and physical therapy room in the middle. That's shaded with the yellow kind of cluster symbol, but you'll notice that the public corridor, which is in the lighter buff color, continues through into what is usually another cluster, but that's where we have the consumer science suite. It's the only group of kind of core subjects. It's not down on the first floor, but these same teachers do sewing, cooking, and health. So it's all under the same department, so to speak, and it's off what we're calling is kind of a public corridor as opposed to a cluster corridor, because kids from any cluster obviously could go there. And then at the end of that, where usually we have science labs, we don't need the science labs for consumer science or life skills. In this case, we have our mechanical space, but we also have a project area, and it opens up onto the rooftop of the gym and the cafeteria. So if you were going to do recreational activities here, you could either come from the 3rd floor of the educational wing, I'll call it, or there's another stairway which I didn't highlight, I should have, but that comes up almost directly from the locker rooms on the right-hand side of the building. The overall square footage, even though we packed a lot into it, it's very efficiently laid out, and the overall square footage is right where it needs to be for
Based on
MSBA.
MSBA guidelines.
Yeah. So the next 2 pages, I'm not going to go through them. It's just, we are laying furniture, we're furnishing each one of these classrooms, even at this level of design. We're showing how the desks work, where the teachers, where desk is, where the teaching wall is. We have 2 teaching walls in every classroom. How the music rooms are laid out, how the offices, just everything, because we want to make sure we're not going to change these plans a lot when we get into further design. So we don't want to just draw rectangles. We want to put furniture in them and make sure they actually function the way the school department needs them to function.
And also because furnishings are part of the budget, and we have to do this in order to make it, have an accurate budget. So.
Yeah, because our budget's actually going to say you have 1,100 desks and you have, it's
Very
crazy.
detailed.
It's very, very detailed. The one thing I didn't mention, I apologize, but down on the first floor, there was also, there was a room that wasn't furnished, which is what's making me remember it. There's an AV studio, okay? And so we have a nice sized room, but as I understand it, the cable TV, I don't know what the group is called there, but it's going to be fit out by another group within the city, is that?
Yes, it is. Yes, the people from our Educational Access Committee are working on that as we speak. So,
Yeah.
and they're meeting with you, I think. We're all meeting
I
together.
don't know what date it is, but I know it's been arranged.
Mhm.
So you know, there's a lot of, you know, reading, writing, and all that stuff, but one thing that's great about this school is we've got we've got a lot of other specialized spaces where kids, you know, may have a real gift and really want to just do it. There's the tech ed, there's the music, there's the art, there's the AV, there's the consumer science, so, it's a great building, it really is.
To see it like this. We worked so long on it, it was great.
Yeah.
It's really
And
great.
we have money in the budget for, as I said, sound systems in both the gym and the cafeteria. So you will have, you know, when I was doing presentations in the cafeteria at Thurgood Marshall, you couldn't hear people even when they were on a microphone. And you are gonna hear, you know, you're gonna hear people. These are being designed acoustically, even though they're not auditoriums. That they will function very well. And the last two pages, really, you know, for all of us, but they're very important for the cost estimators as well as the city knowing. These are various three-dimensional views of what the building, at least the massing of the building and how it's arranged, will look like. And what we are going to continue to study the patterns, the colors, on the outside of the building. But what we did is we have assigned what's a metal panel, what's brick, what's, you know, a window, what's a, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So that the cost estimators have very specific quantities that they can work with. We've shown the play surface here, you can see it on the lower left. And what we are going to do as a, you know, we've started to model the houses in the neighborhood and some of the buildings, you know, surrounding it. And so we're just, when we get into design, we're really gonna start to focus on what this thing looks like, how it relates best to the, you know, the houses across the street or, you know, the houses in the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. So it just gives you some ideas.
Great job, thank you very much. Very exciting.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, very nice presentation.
Yesterday, I think we touched on everything in the overview of the schematic design that is listed here on the agenda. What I wanted to tell you a little bit about is Walsh Brothers put together an estimate, and PM&C, which is an estimator that comes under the designer, they put together an estimate independently. And this process has been going on through the month of July. We had several meetings to meet and discuss the scope of the design and help them in terms of making sure that they were both estimating the same thing and that we had covered you know, everything that would be in the building. So as a result of that, we received both estimates on Friday, and yesterday we had an all-day long cost reconciliation meeting where we went through line by line all the costs and unit costs, quantities, you know, scope of the cost, and we ended up doing that, and we were able to bring the two costs within 1% of each other. So MSBA allows you to be up to 3% in terms of difference in cost. So what I'm going to do is hand out the results of this cost reconciliation. On the left-hand side is the architect's cost estimator, PM&C. The right-hand side is Walsh Brothers estimate, and the variance is on the far right side. Just to give you a little bit of history on the cost. At the time of the preferred schematic report, which went in February 14th of this year, we were at a project budget of 90 million, just over 90 million. That includes construction contingencies, owners contingencies, and it was an all-in number, including land acquisitions and everything else. At this point, at that time, our construction budget was roughly $64 million. That is without the piles. So as Jean had said, we anticipated having to add another $7 million if we did go with piles, which would have brought that up to 73. At this point, and what MSBA requires is that we go with the architect's estimator, their number, and that the construction manager's number is a check to that, and we try to reconcile them together so that everybody feels comfortable that, you know, we have the right cost. And at this point, our construction cost is at $67,725,000. So we are less than where we thought we would be with the addition of the piles. So at that point, this is the what you'll see here. The estimate is broken out into what they call a unit format, which basically looks at major components of the building, and it's categorized into the components that you see over here on the left-hand side: foundations, basement construction, structure, so forth.